By Jules.
Live streaming is on.
Hey, good morning and evening, everyone, from wherever you're coming from. I'm Dan Gay, Chief Marketing Officer of BlockCerts Blockchain, and we're back with another World from Here. Very exciting to talk about something that's happening, really a massive global shift in workers and work. And while many want things to go back to the normal of what the norm used to be, the new normal has actually taken hold, and we're going to talk about that today. Many names for it. The gig economy, the Great Resignation is something that's been bantered around here as of recent. And we're going to talk about how to bridge the gap. So with that, I have with me my esteemed colleagues, Mr. Daniele Menzi, who is the president of Fusion.
We got a promotion.
Wonder. You got a big promotion this morning. Hi, Daniele.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Come stai? There's nothing less interesting for me than job title. So
yeah, absolutely. But what can you do with it? That's the main thing. So
yeah.
Cool. And then we have Mr. Tim Vasco, who's the Chief Executive Officer of BlockCerts Blockchain and the Chief Architect and founder. So good morning to you, Tim.
Morning, Dan. Morning, Daniele. How's it going?
Great. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. And if you like what you hear, please click on the thumbs up button. We always like to have that, and that lets YouTube know that we are serving up great content. So thank you very much for joining us. We're going to get this going in about 30 minutes, wrap up. So with that, Tim, we've been looking at a lot of surveys and a lot of what's happening in the ground shifting. A lot of people don't really realize what's happening, but there seems to be a little bit of a divide between employees and businesses, and just what has happened through COVID, and also what's happening today as businesses prepare to open offices and get back to work in a different fashion.
Yeah, I wanted to just talk about what we've been highlighting, Dan, this idea. We talked about releasing our wallet and all of that, and this idea of you're in control. We've been talking a lot about cloud power to the people,
right?
And what decentralized means and so forth. And it just is so relevant as to how the world's changed, like the world from here, really. And so today I wanted to talk about this concept of the world from here ready for the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation doesn't mean everybody's giving up. It means they're resigning. They're like, hey, I was able to work from home. I was able to do some really amazing stuff from home. And we're going to show some work from home examples that are absolutely brilliant, like just really brilliant in the world from here's that people didn't never even think of them as work from home. That's how brilliant they were, right?
Exactly.
And it basically comes down to this idea that businesses and employees are out of alignment. And Daniele and I and you, Dan, have been talking about how out of alignment old business models are. Well, one of the greatest business models in the world is where do you work? How do you work? Right. And so we always call it like we've been calling it work from home, but really it's just like world from here, hashtag WFH. It's really hashtag WFH work from here. Where are you? Like really, where are you working? And, now you're getting this. This was just on July 6th from Forbes, where all this started popping up, is how professionals and organizations need to prepare for the Great Resignation. Well, guess what? You're preparing for the Great Resignation. If you go rebuild your business model around pre-COVID, pre-digital everything, and it's a model that's not hybrid, it's not going to work for the people who are doing the Great Resignation, which is a hybrid model. It's like work from here, right?
It's like a hello boomer moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. And so it comes down to that big question, why? Why did people hang on? Well, Who knew what was going to happen? Who still knows what's going to happen? Dan, you and I talked about people we know that have had double vaccines and have COVID right now, right?
Tim, I think it's, I just want to give a perspective. Perhaps we never talked about, I heard this a couple of times into different podcasts. So, there are people living in the current age that have heard for the first time about decentralization very recently,
Right.
by the launch of Bitcoin, blockchain, whatever. But I heard, and then I made some research on my own, that if you go back in history, there are some macrocycles and some microcycles that repeat every approximately 250 years and 80 years. The former is a kind of step forward towards a decentralized future. If you go back in Europe, in the middle, in 1500 or so, about 500 years ago, so there was a shift from the monarchy to the crowd.
Right.
There was a kind of decentralized step. And 250 years later, there was another big step, which is what happened in the US, Declaration of Independence, and so on and so forth. So this means kind of, if you go back in the history, there's always some milestones that goes into the decentralization
Right.
of countries, of crowds. Now, the work from home, or the work from here, or the work from anywhere, it's a step towards decentralizing the workforce.
That's
It's
right.
the very first step. Never happened because this, Bitcoin, all the rest, kind of decentralizing finance. But here we're talking about a trend which is repeating in history, which is decentralizing. Something has been working in a centralized manner since the history of employment, so to say.
Right.
So to me, it's very fascinating to see how the world is moving to a more decentralized manner. And I believe we are at the beginning of a microcycle that will continue to grow from now until 2030. So in the coming years. So it's just so exciting to be part of it.
Well, and you're right, Daniele. And one of the things that's really fascinating, I actually was having this conversation earlier this week, is how this is such an entrepreneurial era. And the thing that people don't understand quite often, especially people who have always had jobs, is how much, if you're not used to uncertainty and doubt and not knowing where the next paycheck's coming from, it sucks. And one of my favorite authors said at one point, he said, if people understood how insanely hard and insanely unlikely it is for you to start a business and succeed, nobody would ever do it. Like, you have to be absolutely insane to do this. But we've got this kind of new economic model of freelance gig work that's expected to grow and is growing. And the big change there is going to be this model of what people are going to see. So they're gonna get that flexibility, right? There is going to be a lot more freelancing opportunities out there. But if this is right, let's look at these stats. 50% of the US at 86.5 million to the gig economy by 2027. You said 2030. This is like 2027. 50%. 40% of US-based workers generate a large part of income via gig. The gig economy expands 3 times faster than US workforce, 64%. If given a choice, hashtag WFH and take 30K less. Flexibility has a price. Yeah. It is astounding. 41% of graduates freelance. Postgraduates freelance. 51% of freelancers would not go back to traditional work, me being one of them, for any amount of money. I'm not going back to an office. I left the office 7 years ago, right? Sold an office. We own the office building. I got out of it. U.S. freelancers contribute 1.2 trillion to U.S. economy. Okay, so there's all your stats, right? Let's think about economics now. And this is the other side of decentralized, right? This is a new economic model too. So as this is happening, And as the traditional consulting contract, you know, the best consultant in the world, the best freelancer in the world is one who's constantly putting themselves out of business. Because the more efficient you are, the faster you get it done. It's a dichotomy. The less money you make, typically, and the faster you're out of work, so you got to go find another deal, another gig, right? That's the tough part about consulting. So consulting economics has always been there. Charge more because you have to make up for the slack time when you can't charge anything. That's the difference between a consistent check and the economics of consulting or freelance work. Well, if this is true, and if we have this big decentralized force coming in like this, workforce coming in like this, what's that going to do to the pressure, supply demand? What's that going to do to the pressure on A, finding the work, and B, being able to charge for it? Higher talent coming in for lower dollars as they're trying to acquire jobs, and there's going to be some equilibrium point in there. There's this new economics kind of that's going to be this wrapper, not only around finance, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, but around the true factors of production, and the factors of production being human labor. So when we start thinking about decentralized, or what I like to call it is the open structure organization, we have to think about these hybrid models, because it's not totally comfortable. And you guys are entrepreneurs. We're all entrepreneurs here. It's not totally comfortable when there's no money or negative money in the bank and no real prospect tomorrow of where that next capital is going to come in from. That takes a special kind of tolerance for risk, right?
But I think the current configuration, it very much depends from the financial education that the schools that we have, we have been working with, we have been, studying into, have educated us to do. So right now, we have the tools to become kind of self-employed and educate ourselves about how to plan our future. Obviously, if we look in very simple terms from an asset liability point of view, if you are a worker and your only asset is your salary, and you have a mortgage, and you have monthly spending, it's tough. It's tough because your asset it's based on cash, on fiat money, which is losing purchasing power over time because of inflation. And then somehow, sooner or later, the situation is getting worse and worse because also the excessive money printing all over the world. So, and that's why, to me, the word from here, the word from home, the decentralized nature of what we are encouraging and to do and to tell is giving kind of a tool to empower people. First of all, from an attitude point of view, and later from a learning, from a skills point of view, on how to respond to this shift into the economic trend, which is no longer an economic trend, that is even more than that.
And also, Daniele, I think I want to point out this idea of the hybrid model of how you actually build a business and get paid. Because as you say, there's this kind of inflationary pressure coming in. There's this bunch of money that's been printed in fiat. And then you have this idea of, well, how am I going to offset the risk of the slack time when I can't get paid, or I'm looking for the next gig or what have you. And that's where this idea of tokenomics comes in. Because as you know, if you're holding a portion that covers those basic needs and those basic things, like you said, mortgage, utility bill, auto payment, whatever, and you have this other asset, which is this fundamental kind of token, and you're participating in that work. You're actually building an asset that, if you've chosen the right structure, if you've chosen the right work to do with the right company gig, that's what we do at BlockCerts, and you get your token and it starts appreciating in value, That's happening even when you're not working or you're out over here taking that risk at that trough period when there's no money coming in. So if you have a trough and you have an upside in the token, this is tokenomics. This is staking, farming, APY, all those terms that you always throw out there, because you now have that. You just said it. If your only asset is your salary and your hour, that's what it's traditionally been. We have a new kind of asset, which is participation in that. And it's hard for people to get their head around it. But frankly, that's what's made every entrepreneur who's been successful, is they have that third dimension. That's Web 3.0, right? That's third dimension that's not been accessible to most people before. It is now because of tokens and tokenomics. People don't understand.
But in a flow point of view, and again, I remain on the balance sheet level. I don't go into the income statement or the cash side. If you remain on the balance sheet and then we compare asset with liability, we were taught that we are working to buy assets like a house, like a car. I mean, car is not an asset, but sometimes people believe it's an asset. But let's say we perceive
supercars are an asset.
Supercar is an asset.
My cars are not assets.
So we kind of have the perception that we do things and we improve our wealth because of the assets we get an access to or we own, while in fact most of them are liabilities, and we decrease our wealth over time without even being too much sophisticated, including the CPI or the inflation calculation, whatever. If we stay on a simple term from the macro, so people perceive to have asset instead of have liability. And what we're telling right now is that you need to own assets if you want to increase your wealth over time. And how and what you have to do to own assets, first of all, you don't need any financial advisor. We are not financial advisor. If someone is asking me, what do you recommend to invest? And I always answer, I cannot tell anybody. You have to go. Education is free. You go on YouTube, you Google, you have a certain risk tolerance, educate yourself and do your own research and make your own decision. No one on planet Earth can advise you where to put money. That's my take. So in here, what we're telling essentially, there is a shift back from liability back to assets to increase the wealth over time. So the token economy, it goes into this direction, because at the end of the day, tokens are assets, are not currency, and assets are designed from an engineering standpoint to keep purchasing power or to keep an economic value, because of it's the unit economy of an ecosystem. That's the token. And if the ecosystem is growing because of network effects, because of there is an intrinsic value of the ecosystem, then the token increases in value, regardless of the market cap and the token circulation. So if people understand, it's simple, but it's not easy. So if people understand that this is the first step is not which token to buy, but the first step is to understand how does it work and doing it. Take active steps, not to invest, thousands of dollars. Again, not financial advice. You don't need to put all your wealth into one token and then wait what is going to happen.
So let me translate that into terms that we've heard all our lives. Sweat equity.
Right. Yeah.
So sweat equity means, in the world of entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, when you're trying to advance your career, sweat equity has always meant work hard. My dad used to tell me, son, anybody can get rich working half a day. Doesn't really matter which 12 hours you work, right? and that's how I was raised, right? This depression era mentality, work your butt off, sweat equity, don't get paid by the hour, get paid by the effort, okay? Now, the difference between today and all those years I put in working a half a day or more was that sweat equity now can be created in some form of an asset. You don't have to have a check to write. How do you start a business with $0? I have many times. You sweat equity and you actually add tangibility to it. That tangibility is the token market. Now, go back to Bitcoin or go back even further. If you had taken the same amount of money and bought the stock or shares of Apple instead of the phone, how much would it be worth today? What's worth more, the phone or the shares? Now, what's happened is the phone was the asset. The phone was the depreciating asset. The shares were the increasing asset. The phone was the utility that gave value to the appreciating asset. With tokens or a utility token, we've mushed that together. We've said,
great analogy.
And that's what cloud power to the people means. So all you have to do is look at the cloud companies. They took the utility of the cloud, mushed it together with all those users. And guess what? If you're a freelancer, you're using it and you're giving your effort and energy and money in to be able to use that. That's the fee economy. So this fee economy has been very powerful, and we're shifting that into a combined economic model that actually allows for those assets to be distributed into through tokenomics. That's probably more complicated than I wanted to get on it, but effectively that's the new economic model. It's the tokenomic, trustonomic model. It's how we can build this out in these new work eras that are business models that are emerging so rapidly, like at lightning speed. You can't even keep up with them all.
Yeah,
right?
And just one quick question, Tim, that to ask anybody is, how many of us would have liked to have shared in the growth and the return and the rewards of those top 5 or 10 companies, those
of the companies we actually gave value to with our effort, not with our dollars investing in a third-party exchange market, not with our dollars investing in the tools we use, or like Daniele, who, if he ever leaves Apple, just let me know first so I can go on short, because the Appleites out there have made the value of that company. I heard somebody I think my daughter said, well, Dad, Apple's not really it's not really a technology company. It's a designer company. Right. Yeah. And it's true. It's a brand. It's a designer brand. But the fact is that you're right, Dan. It's like, how much, if I was able to be part of that utility and part of that economics at the same time, how much would that be? How valuable would that be to us today? And only now is Google starting to compensate all these creators of content. What's YouTube without content?
Right.
What's YouTube without content? It's nothing. It's a video platform, right? So we are seeing the shift. We're seeing the really smart companies are going to figure it out. The really smart freelancers and people who are in the part of this Great Resignation are going to figure it out, because there's a lot of benefits to it. There's a lot of benefits to flexibility. There's risks for sure. There's benefits, but when we look at it, the benefits, I think, for most people, as we're seeing, outweigh the risks. And we've seen that really there's not that much stability. What happens when your industry goes out of business anyway because a pandemic hits? Like, where's the stability there, right? So economically, there's this study going on, and it's not just us talking about this. Obviously, Harvard's doing their studies. They're talking about building the on-demand workforce, what C-suite leaders are looking at, giving them more freedom. Well, you know what? You don't have to give freedom anymore. You just take it. Like, that's the whole idea. Even the wording is kind of off. VPs and directors, administrative struggles. Guess what? If I can manage myself, am I more valuable or less valuable? That's a middleman I don't need. So if my job was managing people and people are self-managing, this is the big argument with AI quite often, right? We start limiting or eliminating layers. Okay, well, got it. You know, I got a bot to do that, Joe. Sorry. So Joe, go use your talents somewhere else, and reorganizing that workforce and looking at this management, quote, management disconnect. People don't want to be as managed, or I guess managed in the same way. Managing assets makes sense. Managing people, not so much. People that are self-managed are way more powerful in their own lives and for organizations.
Yeah, and Tim, I think this is a pretty powerful thing that the C-suite is saying that we need more gig workers, we need more freelancers, we need valuable talent that comes from many different places. But the actual managers who manage people don't have the tools to manage people. At least they don't think they have the tools, or they are unaware of the tools that they have at their disposal.
Well, and Dan, you know, I see this quite often. And the other thing I think we need to look at is culture. If you look at a global culture, or the scale and scope of how big the world is and how connected we are, and then you look at all of us at every generation and how we were raised, there are cultural norms within every country, and there are also education systems within every country that actually tie in better with certain functions, right? So there are countries that operate better, operate brilliantly. There are countries like India, for example. They've been operating call centers efficiently for over half a century now, because that's where the West was pushing all that work. Well, over on the Western side, we're like learning to be creative and entrepreneurial. Now that's flooding over into the India and the Philippines and things like that. Meanwhile, for the last 50 years, the tech companies have been distributing knowledge around the world of how to code and things like that. So some places are better with logic and blockchain, right? Daniele,
Yeah.
Eastern Europe,
Absolutely.
and things like that. High, heavy math, chess players. That's where algorithmic thinking comes in really, really substantially. And then you can actually almost track, Microsoft's brilliant at this. You can almost track where Microsoft technologies penetrated in education systems, and you get these brilliant coders in different languages. So this idea of global efficiency spans time zones, it spans knowledge base, it spans historic education, it spans historic culture of operations. And that's the great disconnect with saying that I want to centralize everything. It's impossible anymore. The decentralized efficiency is just so dramatic, not only in finance, but in human evolution. Decentralized makes more sense. Does that mean uncontrolled? No. It means better connections, more efficiency, more productivity.
Well,
I think it's
where it's just, I think you're closer to individuals, even globally, because of the systems that are available, and it's easier to track. Therefore, it becomes easier to manage more people versus if you were in one office and had to sit down with individuals. It's just, as you said, it's more efficient. Sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to say, to me, the decentralized steps we're taking, it's kind of a mankind advancement, because technology has been dramatically improved over the last years. So the way we work should as well, which it didn't actually. Right. So that's why, to me, it's kind of a needed steps to cope up with technology advancement as well as mankind advancement. So it's inevitable. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Exactly. And so, getting on with that, then it's a matter of when, it's a matter of where, and being able to go anywhere on the globe with the click of a button, and boom, you're in control, you're operating, and you're there. That's the way we design this. And I love this. I always have loved this. The ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And Jobs was right when he said that. And I don't know if he said it or one of his writers said it, but it's a brilliant quote, because it may seem crazy, but one of the quotes I read this on new markets this week was, the wormhole of new markets has no basis. And Daniele, you said that a long time ago, many world from years ago, where you were talking about economics, and you said there is nothing to compare this to.
No. And I want to also to provide the example of my experience with WorkCertain, so which is kind of the work product that BlockCerts developed. So because I went through this process way years ago in different corporate environments, so corporates wanted to change the way they work, but the first flow, in my view, is that they start by asking a question. The problem is that if you force yourself asking the right question, you will never end up in asking a meaningful question and then responding to the question in a meaningful way. So here, what I experienced is that many organizations might not know, and perhaps they don't, how and what to do, in which shape, in which configuration, because they have so many processes, so many people, so many teams working together. They have a lot of entropy into the way they connect each other. But working with such a structure is the trigger for them to rethink how to work, starting from a foundational configuration. And that is, for me, it's something is difficult also for the three of us, the whole of us, explaining in a simple terms, because the way consumer would understand this is that they would like to see a big advertisement say, hey, Coca-Cola is using WorkCertain.
Right.
In that case, people will use it. They don't have to, have to be convinced on how to use it. So, but it's so important that for the first mover, especially the guys that want to change the world, if they understand this, I have no doubts that they will take active steps into this direction.
Well, I think it comes down to this idea that, going back to what we just talked about, the Great Resignation, freelancing, the risks that come along with that, the rewards that come along with that, the new rewards that are possible, and this idea of certainty, this idea that when I walk away or I walk forward from anything, I'm in control. I have my own destiny, and therefore I can impact other things with my skills and my talents. I can take my package along with me, and my package grows in value as I grow in experience, and now as I grow my own private cloud and I grow my certainty. And that's why certainty is so important. That's why we are the certain company. That's why WorkCertain means that you're taking that history with you, as opposed to handing that to somebody some centralized authority and saying, here you go, here's everything that I have. Certainly organizations need to exist to foster this, but one of the personal goals I have, and I read this several years ago and I started talking about it, is we will need to create, this was pre-COVID, way before COVID, 600 million new jobs to create a productive economy. 600 million. No corporation on the planet has ever even come close to that. So how is that really going to operate? That's going to operate with these individuals that at different varying levels want to work, and at different varying levels, if you're super high tolerance for pain, become an entrepreneur.
Ouch.
If you're not quite so high tolerance, but you like the idea of upside, go to work for a startup. If you're even less high tolerance, but you still have a tolerance, you want upside, work for a massively innovative organization or group, or with an organization, a group of people. But at the end of the day, we all have bills to pay. We all have these economic things we have to have. And that's really where the power to the people has shifted in my view. And, it's why we keep saying cloud power to the people, because you are walking with that in your back pocket. You're working certain, you're certain about who you are, your identity, you're validating all that with every action you take. And you're identifying it, de-identifying it to the people that you want to know how strong you are. So love this graphic. And we really we're out of time here, but I think it's a fascinating subject to talk about what you're in control actually means, why we've created this, starting point of the wallet, the utility, the ability to go to work. Super excited to roll out more things that get more people the authority and the power to do everything they want to do, with flexibility, success, certainty, and kind of increasing the odds in your favor. That's really what this is about.
It is, Tim. And, bridging the gap, businesses have the need for good workers, and workers obviously have the need to work. We work to live, most of us, or some of us live to work. But with that, you have to have the right tools. And that's what we're talking about.
And that's what the cloud really is it's tools. Yeah. And I grew up working construction. That's how I put myself through school. And my boss, who was like a second dad to me, Dwight, told me one day I showed up for work without my tool belt. He said, "Go home." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "How are you going to work? You're worthless to me without your tools." So, strap on your tool belt. That's what we're here for. BlockCerts is the tool belt. Put it on, keep it with you. Then we won't send you home and you won't get sent home. You'll have your tools that you need and you'll always know they're there. I still have that tool belt. It's pretty old and gross, but I still have that. And it was a lesson to me that I never forgot. So hopefully we can do that with the cloud and digital work and give it to people so they have their tool belt with them at all times and it's theirs, right?
All right. Well, let's wrap this up.
So with that, everybody stay digital. Digital is where it's at. Stay safe. That's incredibly important. Too many people getting double vaxxed and then getting COVID. And that's just, this isn't over. Stay healthy. Keep in touch with your loved ones and go digital.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Go digital or go home.
Thanks to you, Danielle. Enjoy yourselves this evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.